It's completely silly, but early in my radio career, I knew that I arrived when a radio station would actually produce a jock sweeper or jock jingle for me. Well, at least it gave me a little confidence that they weren't gonna immediately fire me. Oh, I knew they eventually would, but I probably would have a couple months of employment guaranteed. The thing I love about these jock jingles or jock sweepers is they're another opportunity to infuse fun and personality, not only into your show, but onto your station while promoting you. So I'm gonna break down a couple ways to create these jock sweepers, even if you don't have any legitimate voiceover assets. So I have some ways for you to pull this off purely using AI voices. You ready? I think the answer would be yes.
We are on the air.
Well, sure, I was super excited to see my very own jock sweeper right there in the cart rack back in the probably late 80s. But it did sound like every other jock on the station's, jock sweeper. So eventually it just wasn't enough. I wanted to find a way to pop some of my own personality into this production element. And over the years, I have created a whole heck of a lot of these nutty jock jingles, jock sweepers. I mean, on my station, XXX80s.com, your super center for all things 80s. I have, as you can see right here, about 30 different jock sweepers in the lineup. And while it's so thrilling for all this hot air to describe these jock jingles, let's have you listen to a couple.
The last time I saw a head like that was in a bottle of formaldehyde.
Oh, it's lovely.
XXX80s.
What are you, some kind of a smart aleck?
I'm a wild and crazy guy.
You're an animal.
XXX80s.
Well, both of those examples kind of employ a montage of different drop-ins, but all kind of building on each other, having like a conversation with each other around a similar theme. But you don't need all that. And a little later, I'll show you how to pull this off with just using one drop-in. But first, let's break down the different styles of this production element, because what you heard, believe it or not, employs two different styles. And those two styles are setup and reactive. Now, the first jingle you heard was a reactive jock jingle. So basically, it started off with the jock name, which is me. Then it goes into, a movie drop-in or voiceover cue that is reacting to that name, and it's commenting on it with a funny line. Most of the time, it's kind of derogatory or sarcastic, but any funny line will do. And then the production element ends, of course, with the station ID. That's style one. And style two is the setup. In that example, you heard it starting with the montage of drop-ins, which you can say act as an introduction to the jock name and then the station ID. So they basically, introduce who's coming up in a funny way. And while I said there's two styles, I mean, come on, have I ever left you hanging with a measly two of anything? Of course not. It's the radio DJ dude. I'm all about over-delivering. There is a third style, which we'll just call totally rando. And I have an example of just a random drop-in, a random piece of audio that is funny and does kind of cause a pattern interrupt, but it doesn't really necessarily introduce or react to a jock's name. Here's an example of that.
Now let us try it to the music.
Hoop-dee-doo, hoop-dee-doo. I hear a polka and my troubles are through.
Oh my God, don't stop now!
XXX80s.
And even though the rando style isn't, directly interacting or building on your personal name, what it does do, it's kind of establishing a baseline for what listeners can expect. It's an extension of your personality. If, your show is packed with fun and unexpected moments, well, that totally fits your brand to throw in, a random audio cue before your name. So once again, it just reinforces your personal brand. And that's another bonus of using these produced fun jock jingles and jock sweepers, because they are an extension of you. While you're not talking during that break, those production elements are reinforcing your personality to your audience. So if personality is on offer while listening to your show, well, this jock sweeper definitely reinforces that. And it checks one of my long-standing boxes of always delivering those unexpected fun moments to your listeners. Just little audio zingers that hit them out of the blue, moments they weren't expecting, but still deliver delight. Because once again, that should always be top of our priority list with any of our radio stations. And to hear me wax even deeper on the subject of what you should, and more important, should not be doing on the air of your radio station, well, I offer this, my impassioned Dudafesto. This video right here is a must-watch for anyone with an internet radio station. But back to the business at hand, we have to set you up with your very own super cool, super fun Jock Jingle Jock Sweeper. So let's get this production party started and we'll jump into Adobe Audition. Now the first part of this assumes that you may already have some pre-recorded station voiceover cues and maybe even your own jock liner cue. Here's mine. And that's one that actually I've been using forever. I think that actually was recorded in the 90s. And then when I started XXX80s.com, one of my dreams was always to have my very own sung jock jingle. So I found this company online that produced this baby. So now let's drill deeper into how I use each of these within those two styles I mentioned, the setup and the reactive type of jock sweepers. Here is an example of a reactive jock sweeper. So let's just dissect the parts. You first have the sound effect, then you have the jock voiceover, your name basically, and that's when we go into another kind of quick sound effect that triggers your drop-ins. And these could be anything that, are infused with personality. It could be movie and TV drop-ins, but just know there are some copyright implications by using any movie or TV drop-in, so you kind of have to do your own due diligence on that. But if you don't feel comfortable using, copyrighted content, you can always just, record funny voiceover cues and drop those in. And in a little bit, I'll show you how to do that using AI voiceover, which saves you a ton of time, which saves you a ton of coin, which for internet broadcasters, we're all about all of that. Then after that drop-in, another sound effect is triggered, and then you close up the bit with your station voiceover, your station ID. So this is how a reactive jock jingle looks. And to see it in action, here's how it sounds.
And Jeff Scott.
You are the most dangerous man I've ever met, and you're wacky.
That's nothing from this world.
XXX80s.
Now let's pop over to style 2, which is the setup. And this is how that kind of stacks up on the audio timeline. You first have kind of a sound effect, which triggers your drop-ins. So these are either, in my example, what you see right here is a drop-in montage. It's several drop-ins, all, kind of interacting with each other within a similar theme. Then there's another sound effect, which brings on the jock voiceover sound effect, which then closes up the bit with your station ID voiceover. So that's the basic template for a setup style jock jingle. And here's how another one of those babies sound.
You're compulsive, sick perverts.
Yeah, baby.
XXX80s.
But being a mastermind reader, I already can sense what your fingers are going to start typing into the comments. Well, Radio DJ dude, where you get all those cool sound effects? What about all those voiceover cues? I don't got none of them. How can I get me some of them? Okay, first things first, For free sound effects, there's a lot of options online. I know I've mentioned some sources in past videos. I'll drop a couple links in the description. Another feature of the service I use all the time for really cool and realistic AI voices, 11 Labs, which I definitely think you should check out. They allow you to do basically text to sound effect cues. So you just type in the kind of sound effect that you're dreaming of, and whammo bammo, you'll get 3 or 4 different versions of that. So that's something fun to play with for sound effects. Now, in terms of voiceovers, I mean, what you're hearing, those were real professional voiceover artists or singers for the jingle that made those over the years. But I get it, you may not have some of those resources. So let's get you set up with your own custom voiceovers using, those very talented bot recording artists in the sky. So in 11 Labs, we're going to do 2 things. One, we're going to generate a Jock voiceover. So I'm going to do one for myself, Jammin' Jeff Scott. We'll pick a good voice to use, adjust some settings, and boom, hit generate.
Jammin' Jeff Scott.
And if you're not thrilled with the read, well, tweak the settings and hit generate again.
Jammin' Jeff Scott.
And I think one of those 2 will definitely work. Okay, we're not done yet. Let's say you want to travel the path of creating your own funny custom voiceover drop-ins. Instead of using movie or TV drop-ins, you want to write your own and have them recorded. Now, of course, you or someone at your station can record these using their own human voice, but if you want to save time and money, well, we hit 11 Labs up for this task, and it performs flawlessly. Well, to a point. I mean, you're never going to get 100% sounding human reads, but come on, 85, 90% sometimes is good enough for our little internet rinky-dink radio stations. So here's a quote-unquote funny liner we're going to employ the bots to record. And I think it's really important to have vocal variety, vocal contrast in this production element. So if your voice for your name and the station ID is male, to me it makes sense to have a female voice deliver that funny drop-in. Just once again, it's audio contrast. It provides another pattern interrupt, and it kind of, jolts people awake if they're not always hearing the same voice. So that really helps. I've added some punctuation here to give it a more natural sounding read. Hit generate.
In high school, he was voted most likely to make parole.
And yeah, I think that sounds great. Definitely usable for our needs. And of course, just don't stop at 1. I think if you're going to launch a Jock Jingle, you want to have at least 10 or 15 in your arsenal. So when they rotate, your listeners aren't going to be hearing the same old stale Jock Jingle every time. So that's really important too. Anytime you launch a new bit, a new feature, a new production element, make sure there's enough variety, there's enough fresh versions of that production element just to keep the listening experience fresh for your listeners. Okay, back to Adobe Audition. Let's now create some Jock Jingles with these voiceover elements that we just generated over on 11 Labs. And if you remember from my earlier examples, I had those drop-in montages. Well, let's just strip this down and keep this really simple for this one. We're going to do a reactive Jock Jingle using, of course, the Jock name voiceover. Then we'll just use a single movie drop-in and then wrap it up with a station ID. So that's how this production element looks on the timeline. Let's give it a whirl.
Jammin' Jeff Scott.
Fat, drunk, and stupid is no way to go through life, son.
Triple X 80s.
Okay, totally usable. I like how that sounds. Now let's throw that female voiceover cue into the mix and see how this baby sounds.
Jammin' Jeff Scott.
In high school, he was voted most likely to make parole.
Triple X 80s.
Totally dig that. And I might even put these on the air at xx80s.com. Okay, well, that's reactive. Let us create a setup or intro style Jock sweeper. And we'll do that using another voiceover cue that I created over on 11 Labs. So right here, this is what all the pieces look like for this production element. If you study the different tracks, you've got the sound effects, you have the voiceover cues, more sound effects, and blah, blah, blah. Here's how it sounds.
And now, a man so vain, he even has his dental x-rays photoshopped.
Jammin' Jeff Scott. Triple X 80s.
Now, there is one more style, and it's kind of a hybrid where you're blending the reactive and the setup. And I think anytime you could find a drop-in or any kind of setup element that basically asks the question, well, who is this guy? Who the heck do you think you are? And there's tons of these type of lines out there in different movies and TV shows, or you can create your own. But here's an example of using this hybrid approach.
Who the hell are you?
Jammin' Jeff Scott.
Get away from me, you horse's ass!
Triple X 80s.
Now, that one's obviously using clips from Throw Mama from the Train. But here is kind of a prefab generic jingle setup that does the same thing.
Everyone's favorite guy.
Jammin' Jeff Scott.
Stupid, worthless, no good, goddamn freeloading son of a.
Triple X 80s.
So your only limitation with this production element is your imagination. So I implore you just to go nuts, have a lot of fun with this, because once again, that is the true purpose of a jock sweeper, of a jock jingle. It's not just to convey your name and the station. Oh, that's a snooze fest. That provides zero value to your listener. You want to use this moment and pack it with punch and pack it with personality. So find ways to do that using some of the tips and tricks I've just showed you. And most important, let fun be the guiding principle. Okay, I hope your creative fuse has been lit and you run with glee with this concept. And hopefully what you're gathering, there is no right or wrong. If this fits your own style, if this meshes with your personality, then it's perfect for you. So the only thing you shouldn't do is not do it. And I'd love to hear what you create. I mean, you never take me up on these offers, but please, if you want to post a link in the comments or send me an email through RadioDJDude.com, I'd love to hear your brilliant jock jingles. I'm Jeff, the Radio DJ Dude, and this is actually a video that I've been wanting to do for a long time because I really dig, as maybe you can tell, jock sweepers. And hopefully you got something out of this. I hope you're going to take action and create your own. And before you do, some immediate action that I'd even love a little more is a like and a subscribe from you. I do so appreciate that. It really helps this channel grow. Maybe one day to, 2022 subscribers. Oh, stop it. I'm just wet myself a little. And until our next radio rendezvous, you keep rocking those mics all over the world.